This is the first time I've used AI in any kind of project. Without it, it wouldn't have been possible. This would not have been possible. Today I'll be breaking down a project where I used AI for the first time. Very much turns out that AI is not a one-click solution. You have to really steer it, play with it, get to a certain result, and even then, you still have to do a lot of work to get to a consistent result that is usable in a real-world scenario. So let's get into this. There's a rugby client and they wanted to announce their next season of fixtures, but they didn't want to do it in their standard way that they've been doing it all the time. This year they wanted to try like a video game retro aesthetic. I had never done anything like this before, but I'm always keeping my eye on what's happening in the design world. And I thought, okay, this is probably possible with AI. I only had about a week to make this, and they said, all right, have a look into it. Let me know what you can find. So I start looking to Stable Diffusion, a localized solution that would probably be the best route to get consistent results. So I'll start looking it up, learning it, downloading just to get Stable Diffusion up and running. And after the day ended, I realized this is way too steep a learning curve for the time I've got. This cannot be the only way. And then I had an epiphany that night. I remember TikTok have these amazing AI filters. And I thought, well, if it's possible to do AI filters like this with a phone, then surely there must be an app for this. And lo and behold, there was. We tried a couple, but AI Mirror was the one I settled on. Started experimenting on my pictures of myself, really cool results. I shared it with the client the next day. They were very happy. So we proceeded. R&D. Using a mixture of filters was the way to go with this. So I couldn't just put a player's photo into it as a whole and just one filter and we tried that. That didn't work. A few reasons why. With AI apps, they have like a limited input resolution. So AI Mirror has a 960 by 960 input. So no matter what you give it, it will assess that image as if it's 960 by 960. So if you're going to put a full length photo in there, the face is not going to get any kind of attention. The faces were coming out weird and blurry and had no likeness whatsoever. So I started putting in different parts of the body separately. So the face, certain hands holding balls, because hands and AI, we are kind of now getting there, but a year ago it was still a bit dodgy. I put in the hands separately. Tattoos, I'd have to put that in separately. I had some issues with that. I'll talk more about that later. I had to put in the faces into its own filter and the torsos and the shorts into a different filter because the kits had to be pretty much spot on. Can't really change it at all, stylize it much because it would just start putting PS2 logos on it and just garble. If you try to use the same filter for the faces, then the faces looked way too uncanny, like PS2, PS3 kind of level. And we wanted to keep it to the pixel, 90s era. So I had to use a different filter for the faces and a different filter for the kits.
Look dev.
Okay, we found the right filter, but now we have to find a generation that works. So with these models, you have to generate, see what it gives you. It gives you 4 options. You're like, I'm not sure about that. Then you hit, okay, 4 more, please, 4 more, please, 4 more, please. So it was like that with all of them. And sometimes the pose we were using wasn't understanding it. So I had to go through many different versions or try a different photo. And then in the end, I had a folder full of component images from each player. And then I had to take that into Photoshop and then try and merge it together using layer masks and clone stamping and
Photoshop behind the scenes.
that would be the torso. This would be the head by itself. There's the guy himself. And then I just put these on top and that's how it works. So using the original image, I was able to scale up the head properly, get everything in proportion. Here's another example. This is how I cleaned up his logos. I had to place that on nicely. Logos, body. He's got detail around his face and then his body, the arms, it kind of breaks down a bit. You are looking mostly at his face. So that works. And there's a lot of layers here. That's the photo we were working with. The resemblance is pretty nice. And it's stylized enough that it's not uncanny. It's just nice on the eyes. You can see how many things you have to do. It gave us actually brown hair, how to hue it down and just on the hair. Here we go. There's the logos from the original image. That's the original image. You can see that's kind of what I got. And then I used clone stamped it just to merge that seam over there. That's the original. Can you see the face it gives you if it's low res, you get very different results from the face. So, pretty close resemblance.
AI complications.
There were differences, like skin tones were different, hair tones were different across the components. So you'd have to put them together, use camera raw to hue shift and merge and clone stamp. Some iterations had great hair, but a funny smile. And then the other iteration had a great smile, but silly hair. So I had to break it all up and really jigsaw it together. So it definitely was not a one-click solution. AI is just a tool, is what I found here. It's just a tool that you have to really steer and guide to your intended result. And even then you have to do a lot of the lifting yourself.
Kit logos.
Kits are sprinkled with logos, sponsor logos, kit logos, all sorts. This was not computing in the app. It was just giving me back broken logos. They weren't adhering in any way, shape or form. I had to clean the kits up. So at first I was cleaning it up in Photoshop with clone stamp and that. But then in the app, they've got a little brush tool where you can annotate and brush over images before you generate. Towards the end of the project, I was told, no, we actually do need the logos on it. So I ended up using the crystallized filter in Photoshop, I think it's called, to superimpose the logos of the original image, and that integrated really well. Tattoos are also intricate, and no matter how much I cropped it down to just the tattoo, it would just give you like checkered patterns or just some random things. I think very rarely you'd get something that was kind of resembling the original design. Tattoos are a part of your identity. If you've got a tattoo covering your arm, that tattoo is part of who you are. So it was very important to try and be authentic. After trying with AI several times, I ended up using a similar technique as to the sponsor logos and using a filter in Photoshop from the original image. There was a lot of Photoshop work here, a lot of photo manipulation, which is what I used to do before I got into motion design. So I had a bit of experience there.
Time for After Effects.
So that was how I made the roster of players. After that, it was just make the rest of it, make the UI, make the stuff in After Effects, which is straightforward. I used a lot of reference from Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat. The background was provided by their in-house designer, shout out to Lucy. And then I just used the different assets of the brand to populate the composition. So looking at the project, we can see I created a template system so that any player could be hooked up with any other player. I had all the players lined up, and you can see the logo's there, the name of the player is here. I can change the name of the stadium here. I can make the left player something else. Everything changes. The name, the colours behind him, the health bar, the logo. And it's just cool. Then I had a couple of extra things, like they've got regions. One version goes to South Africa broadcast, one version goes to Europe. What else do we have? Auto-sizing boxes, just using emboss layer mask and using auto-size based on the length of the texts. These patterns in the background, they're just using a displacement map, using the background itself. The trophy's got a wiggling light and a wiggling shadow, just to indicate some kind of fire or intensity or some kind of energy. I'm never one to use template projects, but because of time, let me go to Storyblocks, and I found a good one to have this retro filter. I was able to grade it and tune it to my liking, of course. Have this texture on top. Carried the aesthetic quite well. If you turn it off, you can see how it looks with and without it. Just makes it look a bit more like a CRT.
How about that intro?
The intro logo, they want to call it URC4. So what I did is I created a simple text version of that, and then I put that into the app thinking, okay, they might give this nice embossed, stylized, retro logo from it. It'll be like amazing. And that didn't work. It wasn't giving me anything. It was just giving me the same thing back with like slight changes. I tried maybe 12, 13 times. Feeling a bit defeated, I thought, okay, you know what? Why don't we just image sequence this? You can see, I put the image in, didn't do anything with it. Just looks the same. AI played with the 4 a little bit, and it was just enough for me to get this kind of look. And I had this was kind of cool. But it wasn't the vibe that we're going for. So put all the fails into an image sequence, and now you've got like this stop motion, slight variation, little bit of a distortion, glitchy kind of thing.
Pacing for engagement.
So the storyboard here was intro, URC4, it's loading, and then fixtures, because every game starts with a loading screen. However, in this day and age where no one has any attention span, you've got maybe 1 second to interest the viewer before they'd move on. Initially, it was just URC4 loading for like 2 seconds, and the client said, no man, no one's going to watch this. This is just going to get scrolled. That was a great bit of feedback. So what we ended up doing was bringing the fixtures straight away, but we put a mosaic effect on it. You could see there's something there about to be revealed. You just have to hang on tight. So we've got the effect of the loading screen, but then also there's something coming. Just wait for the payoff.
Sound effects.
I used Artlist for the sound effects because I've got Epidemic Sound for music. It's amazing for music because you can get all the separate tracks for it, all the different melody, drum, bass, all that. But the sound effects library is okay. It's a bit lacking compared to Artlist. Artlist has a very extensive sound effects library. Sounds pretty legit to me, mate. In the end, the client was very happy. They were elated. This was a completely unique project. I've not done anything like this before, and it's just exciting because you don't want to be, the last thing I want is to be put in a bucket. Oh, he just does this, he just does this. Whereas I love so much of the spectrum of design. If they want a perfume advert, they want someone who's made 20 perfume adverts. This client of mine, URC, they took a chance on me and we had some beautiful results from it. So I'm very grateful to that. Nice fun project. Ended up being about 2 weeks in the end because at first they wanted 8 players, half the teams. Once they started seeing the results, they're like, hey, can you do the other half of the teams as well? And I was like, okay, I might need another week though. We got all the players in the end, and it was really well received. If you want to see a comparison, I've linked my website below. You can have a look at a bit more of a written breakdown of how we did this. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.